Hi, everyone.
Okay, we are ready to get started. Thank you all for joining us this afternoon. It is December 15th, 2025, and the time is now 1:06 p.m., and the meeting of the A through F Appeals Committee is called to order. We will now call the roll of the members. Member Catanese,
Here.
Dr. Hagerman,
Here.
Dr. Clay.
Here.
Fantastic. This committee has a quorum. These board members represent the members of the committee that were appointed by the board. Could everyone else in the room please identify themselves, starting with the board staff and then the department staff?
Sean Ross, Executive Director, Arizona State Board of Education.
Jessica Mueller, Arizona State Board of Education, Policy and Research Administrator.
Bruce, do you want to introduce? Oh, there you go.
Sure. Bruce Duplanty, Deputy Director, State Board of Education.
Sean Smith, Chief Accountability Officer.
Tobias Butler, Director of Accountability, Arizona Department of Education.
Bethany Spangenberg, Deputy Associate Superintendent of Assessment.
Fantastic. Thank you all. It is noted that this meeting is being conducted by hybrid access, including Zoom, and live streamed over YouTube to accommodate scheduling. The meeting is also being recorded. Thank you all for being here. I'm going to start by giving a general background of the A through F letter grade appeals process. So we are here because schools can file an appeal of their overall A through F letter grade as outlined in Arizona Revised Statute 15241, subsection J. The process does not consider changes to underlying data, only the letter grade that is assigned to the school. The committee will vote on recommendations for the board to consider for letter grade appeal applications received for the 2024-2025 school year. All accountability models and business rules were approved by the board on March 24th, 2025. The policies and procedures governing this appeals process were approved at the October 27th, 2025 board meeting. Appeals can range from adverse testing conditions to school or community emergencies or events, school tragedy, and incorrect data, or possibly some combination of the previous grounds. The window for the appeals application was open from the time that the letter grades were initially released on October 29th, 2025 through November 17th, 2025 at 5 p.m. And we thank the Department of Education for getting those letter grades released early this year. Appreciate that. The schedule for today includes expedited appeals. Expedited appeals are paper review only based on the documentation submitted by the school with the appeal application. The committee decides which schools will be asked to participate in a question and answer appearance, which would be referred to as a non-expedited appeal. Information, including the application materials about schools submitting an appeal application on today's agenda, is in the executive summary sheet published on our board meeting materials website, Simbly. And so moving forward, if there's no questions, we'll get to discussions on the actions. Okay, thank you. So today's items will be taken as a consent agenda. The draft recommendations for the appeals are listed on the agenda item and the executive summary sheet. The committee may accept, modify, reject, or table the recommendation. It will be important that if the committee modifies or rejects a recommendation, for members to specifically state the reason for the change in order to create historical board records and accounts. The committee can discuss today's appeal items if they have any questions of staff from the board or Department of Education, or wish to hold discussion amongst themselves. If it is determined that the committee would like to ask further questions of the school, the item may be tabled until a future A through F Appeals Committee meeting for a recommendation. The committee's recommendations made today will go before the full State Board of Education for final action at the January 26, 2026 meeting. So the first category for action recommendations on today's agenda are adverse testing conditions. These represent a disruption of student testing due to an unpredictable circumstance that negatively impacted student performance on the assessment. With us today is Deputy Associate Superintendent of Assessment for the Arizona State Department of Education, Bethany Spangenberg. Bethany, would you like to add any comments about testing, adverse testing conditions?
Yes, thank you. So we do have our standard training and our test security agreement forms, but sometimes we cannot control everything that's happening in that testing environment at the time. Things come up, and so we also have a process to document the test irregularity. So anything that happens that's a little unusual. And that process helps us to be able to identify the validity of those assessment results. So we do offer that also, and we will work with any school that submits a test irregularity to kind of identify the impact to the student results and take next steps to try to either further prevent any issues from happening or to document that something had happened in case it comes up where we need to go back and look at that testing experience for students. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bethany. And so the remaining categories on today's agenda reflect incorrect data of potentially just incorrect data, the acceleration readiness indicator, self-reporting, and withdrawal codes. Incorrect data reflects gaps or differences in the calculations from the school's true performance. So with us today is the Chief Accountability Officer for the Arizona Department of Education, Sean Smith. And Sean, would you like to add any comments about these incorrect data appeals today?
Yeah, I'll just briefly describe the process that we used when going through the appeals. In particular, Tobias but we'd work with state board staff and Jessica. We'd review, we'd create some what if modeling to determine, based on the factors that the schools described, how would that impact the data. So we tried to, for each school, go through and see, if we recalculated based on those conditions, what would it look like?
Terrific. Thank you so much. And so hearing some of those statements about these appeal categories, I would like to ask if any committee members have any questions or concerns with the draft recommendations for today's agenda. Please identify those so we can pull them from the consent agenda and hold discussion as needed. So are there any schools that you'd like to pull from today's meeting? Okay. Thank you all. And so I'm hearing that no schools were pulled for discussion. And so hearing that no schools were requested, the committee would seek a motion to approve items 2A1 through 2A4, 2B1 through 2B2, 2C1 through 2C2, 2D1 through 2D5, and 2E1 through 2E2 as presented. Does the committee have a motion in that regard?
So moved.
And
Is
I'll
there a
second.
second? Thank you, Dr. Hagerman. Thank you, Member Catanese. All in favor?
Aye.
And
Aye.
the ayes have it. And so going forward, the committee has provided their recommendations for the schools on today's agenda to go on to the January 26, 2026 board meeting for final action. And so right now, those are still pending. We will communicate with the schools on today's agenda and discuss the process for that board meeting on the 26th, so that they can write a comment if they desire or attend that meeting if they desire. And so going forward, our next steps are going to include agendizing the remaining A through F letter grade appeals for school year 24-25. And so this could be a combination of expedited appeals and non-expedited appeals. And so schools will be notified of that status prior to this meeting being scheduled. We do not have a date yet for this second A through F Appeals Committee meeting, but that will be communicated and available as soon as we've identified it. And so if there are no further questions, we'd advise that the committee would stand adjourned until it reconvenes for a future A through F Appeals Committee meeting. Any comments? Executive Director Ross?
Just to give a huge shout out to Jessica Mueller from our team, Sean Smith, and Toby Butler and Beth Spingenberg. And thank you, Appeals Committee members. And again, huge shout out to Jessica. This is a ton of work, and she does it efficiently and brilliantly every year.
So thank you all. We will stand adjourned at 1:15 p.m. and happy holidays.
Thank you. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Aye.